Okay, so, guys, put that away, please. I brought you down here today, and you know why. We talked about this last class, but today our focus is on organization in writing. Next class, we're going to actually start writing the editorial itself on Sunday. But today we're looking at how people organize their writing. And as I was thinking about preparing this lesson for you, my brain was really just spinning on how else can I teach this? How else can I help them think about organization besides the way they've been thinking about it ever since they've been old enough to write? Since you have been writing, people have been talking to you about introductions, conclusions, bodies, transitions, all these different parts of writing. And you've been hearing it over and over. And for some of you, that's great. That's how you're wired. That's how your brain works. You totally get it and you can apply it really easily. For some of you, it's always been a little abstract. You never really quite understood why you need to bother doing that, why it's so important, why are teachers always on your case if you don't have it organized right, or you don't have the introduction the way it should be, and all that stuff. So as I was spinning on this and thinking about a different way to access this concept of organization, I was thinking about all the different things in your life that are organized. Come on in, find a seat. I was thinking about all the other things in our life that are organized, and organized for a purpose, organized for a reason. And I thought of lots of different things, but one of them was dance. And we know that we've got some pretty talented dancers here at school. Leah, there's a seat up here you can join. I don't want you to sit all the way in the back. Have a seat, Gavin. That's fine. Okay? And so I wanted to try to explore the idea of organization through movement. And hopefully for those of you who are wired a little bit differently than traditional school is designed, this will be kind of a different way to think of the concept of organization. So we're going to have a performance of a piece of dance, and then I'm going to ask the dancers some questions. We're going to talk to them about their process in organization. Hi.
Hi.
Speaking of the dancers and their process, come on up. general scope than reading. It's just, the purpose for organization is to guide a person through an experience. Okay? Nabil?
Makes sense of stuff, so it's not just like one thing happened and something comes up.
Yeah. It's not random. It makes sense. Organization helps ideas make sense. Adam?
There are transitions.
There are transitions. Transitions are a part of a strong organization. What else? Francesca?
There's a conclusion at the end.
Yeah. There's an end. There's a wrap it up. And I kind of didn't know the music was ending, so I said, cut it for you. Solomon?
It's also so that you can have it in like chronological order and like whatever order you want, but it's kind of so the reader knows what's happening. Like so he knows what's happening, but so isn't confused.
Yes. Exactly. So it makes the information, whatever that information is, it makes sense. Makes sense. And so you're not confused. So you're absolutely right. Those are all things you already know about organization. How does that apply to what you just saw? How does that apply to dance? And that's what I want to turn it over and I want to ask these guys to talk a little bit about their process in creating a piece of dance. And so starting with, you mentioned introductions, right? So when you guys are creating a piece of dance and you're thinking about a performance, what are some of the things that go into the beginning? How do you decide how to start? What are you thinking about when you think about a start to a piece of dance? Go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just talk.
Oh, an everyday situation.
Like what?
I mentioned this in the other class.
Sorry, people I'm laughing is just in the class before we just like answer all of these the
Now
same.
you know what my day is like.
So-
Doing the same lesson 30 times.
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Well, you have to apply an everyday situation. Like someone sitting at a bus stop, someone in a subway, like we did someone like the class. Maybe that's not an everyday thing, but yeah. Yeah, so you just have to put something that happens every day, and it flows, you know. It works with the piece that you're doing.
So you said something that's important. You start with something that's an everyday experience because it will allow you to flow. And it kind of sets up your first transition, actually, right? Because you start with something common and everyday, and people aren't expecting it to maybe turn into a dance. But then you blend it in that way. What else?
It's kind of like we were talking about this in the other class for a different question, but it's like a mix with this question. So it's kind of like you can start off with that everyday thing, but sometimes the less everyday you make it, the more interesting a dance can be. Like in both of our talent show performances, I mean, he doesn't build robots every day, and I'm not like a zombie awakening from the dead every day. So it creates a different picture and it like gives it a more imaginative feeling, which takes in more interest.
And so for you guys, as receivers of either something that you're reading or an audience of a performance like this, what's the point of an introduction or a beginning or an introductory phase? What is the point of it? What is it doing?
It's to like introduce the topic to tell people like what you're about to talk about.
Right? Okay. In a piece of writing, it does that. But is that applied to what they're doing? Go ahead.
Sometimes you have to have a hook. It's like writing. You have to have something that attracts the watcher.
Audience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. That's absolutely it. That's what it is though. I mean, you've nailed it because really an introduction is about telling whoever's paying attention to you or you want to pay attention to you to pay attention to you. You're saying whether it's with your bodies, with movement, with music, whatever, the introductory part is saying, hey, look over here. I'm about to show you something. I'm about to start something. I'm about to do something, okay?
Seriously, stop saying that.
Grab a chair. Thanks. There's chairs over there on the side. Grab one and set it up. So that introductory part of whatever you're doing, whether it's writing, whether it's dance, whether it's a phone conversation, it's saying, watch me. Listen to this. I'm over here. Pay attention. And it gets your audience's attention. So the next thing, Adam, you mentioned transitions, right? That there are transitions. Organization helps. Transitions are part of it, and it helps. What about you guys as dancers when you're thinking about transitions in a piece? Why do you have them?
one type of beat or scene to like this other one, and if there's no transition, then it's just weird. Like you look like an idiot.
True, you would look like it would feel weird, but you guys, so you know there's something in you that just knows that there's no transition, it feels off. It's like jarring, it's quick. Yes, go.
Also, a transition doesn't always have to be like, linked to the other kind of situation. If there's one specific situation, the transition doesn't have to be linked to the other. You could have two completely different, situations, and the transition, even though they could be opposite, the transition will help them flow.
It'll be, are you saying that it's kind of like a bridge between them?
Yeah.
Like it blends from one really different thing into something very different, but the transitions what allows you to blend over to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, like transitions, they can be like mild or they can be extremely obvious. Like in this type of dancing, they're a lot more obvious because it's either like a whole song change or like a whole beat change or something. But like in different types of dancing, such as I brought up in the other class, types of dancing like waltz, more classical dances, like they either have no changes because it's all this slow pattern of music, but they can also have really mild changes, like maybe there's like an added violin or there's like taken away an instrument.
So when you guys, I want you to think about transitions. Can you think of a time when you would want to have subtle, milder transitions, and then times when you would want a more abrupt transition between two pretty stark or different things?
Maybe when you have like two arguments that are kind of about the same thing, or if you're going between paragraphs and they're similar to each other, maybe you'll have more subtle behind the transition, but if you're going to like two majorly different paragraphs, you're
Yeah.
going to have a more obvious transition.
Alright.
Does that make sense?
Labrie?
If like your argument or you're gonna like a story
Yeah.
that you're writing, anything that you're writing,
Uh-huh.
if the one paragraph like you don't think that it's as important as the one that's upcoming, you might want to have like a more like obvious transition to let the person know that this is what they should pay attention to.
Yep.
Like the most.
Great, so you can have a starker transition, a kind of a more surprising or shocking one if you want to get their attention back. Focus their attention. And that's exactly what it is. If you think about new dance, that's the effect that it has, right? When they use a sharp transition, an abrupt or a big move or something that blends in or the music changes strongly, it grabs your attention, doesn't it? If you were drifting at all, if your attention was drifting, when you hear the music change or when you see a move like that that's stark, it brings you back into it. So the transitions are moving you through, and it would be pretty boring if they were just doing the same thing the whole time. It's pretty boring if you read a piece that's talking about the same point over and over again. So the transitions move you from one idea to the next and keep your interest. So then, Francesco, you said conclusions. That was the ending part, right? So when you think about how to go,
Sorry. I mentioned this in the other class. Power moves. I don't know if you guys know what they are, but it's like it's a move that's very stunning. Like you're shocked. You just saw like this amazing grand finale kind of beautiful move, and that's what a power move is. And if you want to end a good piece, you have to use a power move or a freeze, because a power move, it's like I don't know how to explain it. It's just so it just ends it all,
It's like a grand finale, like when you go to a fireworks show, kind of. It's like there's awesome fireworks throughout the whole thing, but at the end there's like all these really big fireworks, and that's like the part you remember. Or as we were talking about in the other class, it's like in movies, when you're watching a really good movie, like right at the end, there's like that big finale scene, either like leading you on to the next movie, like a cliffhanger or something, or sometimes there's like this really important piece at the end, and that's the part you will remember.
and that's a key thing too, I think. They talked about a power move, and how can that translate to your writing? Lena described what a power move is in dance. And Maud described that that's what they're gonna remember. So how does that translate into what you're writing? Timmy,
Conclusion.
seriously, that's what you're gonna give me? One word answer to that question?
Big conclusion.
A big conclusion, that's better. Come on, think, Adam.
In case of our editorials, just put your strongest argument last to like leave an impression.
Okay, alright, Nora?
We also talk about the words that linger after you're done.
Mm-hmm.
So we can use descriptive words that you can tie it into their lives so they understand it more.
Powerful language.
It's like an ending to a good movie. In dance, you could always just bring something up from the beginning. You can bring it, to the end. You can tie it into the end and stuff. And like a movie, like a really good movie, endings are always amazing. In a good movie, an ending is always like,
Lead
you
you
wanna,
thinking.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you actually reminded me, I forgot, we had talked about something in the first class and you brought it up. Tying your ending back to your beginning can be a pretty powerful organizational strategy to make your audience member, whether it's their reading or it's dance or it's film or it's music, for your audience member to feel that satisfied feeling of closure. When you when you finish with something that you started with, when you bring that feeling of coming, you've heard that phrase, right? Coming full circle, coming back around, and it really is a satisfying feeling for some reason. I don't know why, but it is a very satisfying feeling. You really know it's done. I guess maybe that's why, because you know it's done. How many of you have ever been to a performance of some kind, and at the end you weren't sure if they were actually done or not? Like you didn't know whether or not to clap. You were like, what's going on? Yeah? Okay, so that wasn't really strongly organized, right? You should know that something's done. You should have this sense, you should have this feeling that it's over, and it has finished. Yeah?
I've been at a concert, I went to one, and they did that, and they made you think that it was over, but like you were like kind of confused because it was cut kind of short, and then they came back again and like they did like their whole like ending.
A big encore, like a big ending piece. And that can be intentionally used. It can be used to manipulate the audience intentionally that way, yeah, for sure. Because we know what it should be like. We have that ingrained in us, yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna ask these guys to perform one more time. And this time, I want you to be thinking about everything we talked about. I want you to be looking for the opening. How do they start it off? I want you to be looking for transitions and look for how you know it's over. Yeah?
Think of remember that the intro was the act that we came in late. And
So we're gonna cut that out.
So,
We're actually
yeah,
cutting that
we're
part
cutting-
out. Yeah.
we'll just
skipping
start
it.
we basically cut the intro.
But yeah, the intro was pretty much right when you walked through that door, it started.
And so, I know this may feel strange to do this, but I actually want you to do this, and I already checked with these guys and they're totally fine with it. When you see a transition, I want you to say transition out loud. I want you to call them on it. I want you to call it out, that you notice it, that they're transitioning from one phase to the next phase. So you're just gonna actually say, I don't care. I don't care if you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong. Please, are you kidding me? I'm teaching language arts with dance. Do you think I'm gonna care if you're wrong? This is not the typical classroom. So, yeah. Okay, so you're gonna say transition when they start, okay?
Yes.
Or not when they start, but when you see the transition, you're gonna call it. And I will stop things.
Miss Mo, don't worry, we messed up on the ending too. We both got them mixed up. We're like, we think it's ending, but we don't know.
You know Joey started.
Transition.
saw the different transitions and how it flowed. Did I notice there were times where some of you guys were calling out transition and you heard it, the music shift, but they didn't really transition, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice that? That there were times where, and it's, that they weren't doing anything wrong. And you weren't doing anything wrong either. You were just hypersensitive. You were like, I'm looking for transitions. Oh, I heard something different. Maybe that was a transition. And that's okay. You were tuned in. You were keyed into it. But the transitions were what they were doing. When you saw them change, and they did some hand motions that were really obvious, right? Like they would almost move it on over to the other person, and you could see it wasn't obvious to you the first time. They did them the first time, but when you were looking for them, you saw them this time.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but you know how Maud started off with the slow music?
Yeah.
We ended it with Maud finishing with the slow music.
And that was
Summing it all up.
It's bringing something that happened in the beginning to the end.
Like in writing, it would be maybe a point you made, or maybe you could even sometimes, like, if there's like this special sentence you said at the beginning, sometimes you could even just drag that and bring it to the end, and that would like make it all become one.
I actually have a beautiful example of that. That was one of your classmates writing. You guys wrote your short story. One of your classmates wrote a story called Lost, and it was about. It started out with them being lost, physically lost in a certain place. Like they But while they were going through this process of trying to find their family, they were thinking about a particular very difficult, traumatic issue that had happened in their family. And the writer was thinking it through, and by the time they got to the end, they ended again with this concept of being lost, but this time it was emotionally lost. I don't know my family anymore. This isn't the same family I started with, and I don't know what we're gonna do or what we're going to be from here. But we are lost as a family. So they brought that idea of being lost from the beginning back in the end, but it was a totally